It started with what was supposed to be a routine check. Just another trail cam memory card filled with wolves, deer, and the quiet breath of the Montana woods. But at 2:47 a.m., the footage stopped being normal. Something stepped into frame, something too tall, too thin, and far too still. Its skin was almost white, like moonlight soaked through bone. Ranger Caleb Myers froze as he replayed the clip, leaning closer with trembling hands. "What would you do?" he whispered. "If you saw something watching you back." The camera flickered, catching a half smile. Or maybe a snarl. Then, static. Within hours, that footage would spread across every ranger station in the county, and by sunrise the forest was no longer silent. It was listening. By morning, word had spread across every ranger station in the state. Some called it a prank. Others said it was a bear. But Caleb knew bears didn't move like that. He couldn't sleep, replaying the image of that pale face over and over. Sam offered to go out and check the camera. Said it was probably just a lens error. Caleb didn't stop him. He should have. The forest looked normal at first. Too normal. Birds chirped, snow cracked underfoot, and every breath seemed louder than it should. Caleb's walkie crackled with faint static, then silence. "Sam, you getting that?" he asked. No reply. The air smelled like iron, thick and wrong. For a moment, Caleb thought he saw movement. Something pale between the trees. But it was gone before he could raise his binoculars. Back at the cabin, Dr. Holt watched the same footage again, frame by frame. Her scientific mind searched for logic. Camera malfunction, light refraction, an animal's trick. But logic couldn't explain the way its head turned, or the whisper buried under the static when she slowed the audio. It said one word, a name. Caleb. That night, a storm rolled in fast. Caleb stepped outside to secure the generator. The air was colder than it should have been. He paused. From deep in the forest came the sound of snapping branches and something else. A voice, low, rasping. It said his name again. He turned toward the tree line, and for just a second, lightning lit up a shape among the snow. Tall, pale, and smiling. By sunrise, Caleb hadn't slept. The storm was gone, but the forest was unnervingly still. No birds, no movement. Dr. Holt called from her office in Helena. "The officials want the footage," she said. "They're calling it tampered evidence." Caleb's jaw tightened. He'd worked these woods for 9 years and never seen anything like it. When Sam arrived, gear on his back, Caleb made up his mind. "We're going to the site. We'll pull every camera before they do." Sam hesitated, glancing at the tree line. "And if it's still out there?" Caleb looked toward the forest. "Then we'll know." The drive into the woods took them 20 minutes on a snowmobile trail, barely visible under new snow. The trees pressed closer, darker. Every so often, Caleb caught a glimpse of motion, something pale between the trunks. But when he turned, it was gone. They reached the last camera location near the frozen creek. The device was still there, half buried in ice. Sam crouched down to check it. "Looks fine." The camera's casing was torn open, deep claw marks gouged through the plastic. Something had found it first. Dr. Holt sat in her office, the sound of the forest replaying on her screen. She'd synced the audio with the exact timestamp Caleb had sent. For 30 seconds, it was silent. Then, a faint sound, barely audible. Like breathing, but too deep to be human. Her fingers froze over the keyboard. She rewound, listened again. Then came another sound, a whisper that wasn't part of the wind. It said, "Behind." Sam worked to fix the broken camera, muttering under his breath. Caleb scanned the perimeter. Uneasy. "Something's off," he whispered. A branch cracked. Not far off. Both men froze. Then came a low growl. Too deep for a wolf. Sam turned his flashlight toward the sound. Nothing. When the beam passed over the trees, something white slipped out of view. Too fast, too tall. "Let's move," Caleb said, voice low. They didn't argue. They returned to the snowmobiles in silence. Neither spoke of what they'd seen. Only the echo of that growl followed them through the trees. Back at the station, Sheriff Briggs was waiting. She looked tired, unimpressed, coffee in hand. "You two realize how this looks?" she asked. "Wildlife panic. Fake sightings. State attention." Caleb didn't answer. He simply handed her the broken camera. Her face changed as she saw the claw marks. "This wasn't a prank," he said quietly. Outside, the radio crackled again. A faint voice whispered, almost human, "Caleb." Snow fell again that night, muffling every sound except the wind. The ranger station felt smaller somehow, like the walls were leaning in. Sam checked his gear for the third time, determined to go back to the site where they'd found the broken camera. "If we can recover the memory card, maybe it'll prove what we saw," he said. Caleb didn't want to let him go alone, but the radio kept calling him to check another sector. They agreed to meet at dusk. Neither knew only one of them would come back. Sam's snowmobile tore through the forest trail, headlights slicing the mist. The deeper he went, the darker it became, trees closing in like ribs around a heart. He parked near the old creek bed where the missing camera had been marked. The forest was too quiet. He crouched beside the stump, brushing away the snow. A flash of metal. He found it. Then from somewhere behind him came the sound of a voice. His own voice. "Sam." Back at the station, Caleb's radio crackled to life. "Sam, you there?" Silence. He adjusted the dial, static cutting through like whispers. Then, faintly, behind me, Caleb froze. He called again, louder this time. The radio screamed with sudden feedback, a sharp, piercing sound that filled the room. When it stopped, a voice, distorted, familiar, said quietly, "Caleb, come find him." He rode hard into the storm, snow whipping at his face. The cold burned his lungs, but he didn't stop. At the creek, Sam's snowmobile sat idling, lights still on. His backpack lay open in the snow. "Sam!" Caleb shouted, voice echoing. No answer, only the sound of the engine, and breathing. He turned, flashlight shaking, and caught a glimpse of something retreating into the trees, dragging something heavy through the snow. The next morning, Dr. Holt arrived with Sheriff Briggs. Caleb stood outside the cabin, hollow-eyed, clothes frozen from the night. "Sam's gone," he said flatly. They followed his tracks to the creek, but halfway through, the prints stopped, vanished mid-snow. No signs of struggle. No blood. Dr. Holt played back the last footage retrieved from Sam's camera. Static. Then for 1 second, an image, a pale face, inches from the lens, whispering something too low to hear. Sheriff Briggs shut the laptop and muttered, "That's not human." For the first time, no one argued. 2 black trucks arrived at dawn. No logos, no plates. Men in thick coats stepped out, faces blank, eyes hidden behind mirrored glasses. They said they were from the Department of Wildlife Management. Caleb knew that wasn't true. One of them asked for all trail cam footage, claiming it was classified under ecological containment. Sheriff Briggs protested, but they ignored her. By noon, the footage was gone, hard drives confiscated. Only Dr. Holt managed to hide one SD card, tucked into her glove, heartbeat racing. Inside the cabin, Dr. Holt watched one of the officials copy files from their laptop. He said, "These recordings are the property of the state." She forced a polite smile. "Then why aren't you wearing a badge?" He didn't answer, just unplugged the drive, turned, and left. When the door shut, she slid her hand into her coat pocket, feeling the small memory card she'd stolen. Her pulse thundered. Outside, the trucks started their engines. The forest seemed to tremble with them. That night, Caleb and Sheriff Briggs shared coffee by the dying stove. The cabin creaked with every gust of wind. "They're not coming back to look for Sam, are they?" Caleb asked quietly. Donna shook her head. They were never here for Sam. Silence stretched between them. Then a soft knock came at the door. 3 slow taps. They exchanged a glance. When Caleb opened it, there was no one there. Just a small envelope on the porch, marked with a government seal. Inside was a photo, the pale one standing behind Sam. Dr. Holt drove back to Helena in silence. The SD card burned in her pocket like a secret too heavy to keep. At her lab, she uploaded the footage. It was from an old trail cam date, stamped 1984. The same forest, the same angle, the same creature, her breath caught. Someone had known about this for 40 years, and they'd buried it. The next morning, Caleb woke to the sound of the generator sputtering out. He stepped outside, breath clouding in the cold air. Something was wrong. Across the snowfield, where the trucks had been parked, there were new footprints, bare, human, and enormous. Each step led into the forest. He followed with his rifle, raised, heart pound. When the last print ended, there was only a single word carved into a tree. Come. Sheriff Briggs wasn't the type to believe in monsters, but the evidence left her no choice. She assembled a small team, 2 deputies, Caleb and Dr. Holt, and by dawn, they were moving into the forest. Snow crunched under boots, radios hissed static, and the cold bit at their faces. They followed the footprints Caleb had found, but halfway in, they split into 3 sets, leading in opposite directions. That's impossible, Holt murmured. Caleb stared at the prints, jaw clenched. It's not running from us, he said. It's leading us. The radio crackled again, faint and broken. This is Deputy Miller. We found something. The signal cut out. They followed the direction of his last call, weaving through thicker woods until they reached a clearing. There, the trees were scorched black in a perfect circle. In the center lay Miller's radio, still on, hissing softly. Dr. Holt picked it up and froze. The radio wasn't playing static anymore. It was breathing. Night fell fast, swallowing the forest in a blue haze. The team set up camp near the old ranger outpost, a place abandoned since the 80s. Dr. Holt studied the ancient logbooks inside, dust coating her gloves. One entry caught her eye. Entity sighted near the ridge. Human mimicry confirmed. Containment failed. The date November 12th, 1984. The same day as the old footage. Her blood went cold. While Holt read, Caleb heard movement outside, the crunch of snow. He motioned for silence. Through the window, something pale shifted between the trees. It stopped just beyond the tree line. Too tall, too thin. Caleb's flashlight caught it for a split second. It was watching them. The beam flickered, and it was gone. Then the whisper came again, low and cold. Caleb. The next morning, one of the deputies was gone. His rifle and footprints led toward the ridge. They followed. Halfway up, the track simply stopped. No drag marks, no struggle, just vanished. At the top of the ridge, they found something else, Sam's broken camera, frozen in the snow. Caleb picked it up, hands shaking. Dr. Holt turned it on. The footage began to play, showing the same forest, the same ridge, only this time the camera was facing them. As if someone had already known they'd come. Inside the outpost, the group huddled around the old radio. Dr. Holt had decoded more files from the trail camera card. Government memos, encrypted footage, old research notes. Project Echo, she read aloud. Subject Alpha, non-human adaptive organism. Containment breached, presumed lost. Caleb stared at her. Lost where? She looked up, voice trembling. Here. The radio crackled, and through the static came a faint voice, identical to hers. Help me. Me. Sheriff Briggs took the papers and read in silence. Her lips tightened. Genetic adaptation through isolation. Human mimicry for environmental study. She slammed the folder shut. They made that thing, Dr. Holt nodded, and then they abandoned it. Outside, the wind howled, shaking the cabin walls. From the radio came faint laughter. Low, distorted, mocking. It wasn't human. It was listening. That night, Caleb couldn't sleep. He sat near the radio, staring at the map pinned to the wall, every red mark tracing where the cameras had gone missing. He realized something. Each spot formed a pattern, a ring circling the entire reserve. A containment perimeter? Not cameras, he whispered. Cages. Then, from the radio, his own voice answered back, correct. Dr. Holt finally played the 1984 footage in full. The tape shook with static, then focused. A young ranger walked toward the camera, terrified. Behind him, the creature moved, slow, deliberate, almost graceful. The man turned to run, but it was already in front of him, as if time itself had skipped. He screamed. The camera tumbled. Before the screen went black, a voice whispered through the speaker. "Do not record." The storm outside rose to a howl, shaking the outpost walls. Lights flickered. Radio hissed. Dr. Holt whispered. "It's breaking containment." Caleb gripped his rifle, eyes on the door. "Then it knows we know." Sheriff Briggs loaded her revolver. Outside, heavy footsteps crunched through the snow. 3 slow steps, then a pause. A pale hand pressed against the window glass, and a voice low and clear said Caleb's name. The outpost door shuddered under something massive slamming from outside. Snow fell from the rafters, lights flickered, and the air filled with the sound of heavy, wet breathing. Caleb shouted over the storm, "We hold here, Doctor." Holt backed up the footage to a portable drive, hands shaking. Someone has to know what happened. Sheriff Briggs fired a shot through the window. The flash illuminated a pale face for a fraction of a second before it vanished. Then came silence. Only the wind and the faint whir of the trail camera they had left running in the corner. They heard movement on the roof. Slow, deliberate, the sound of something crawling. Caleb aimed upward. A long, pale arm reached through a hole in the ceiling, fingers groping the air, nails scraping wood. Dr. Holt screamed as the radio burst to life, broadcasting a loop of their own voices. "Run! Run! Run!" Donna fired twice into the roof. Silence. Then, the unmistakable sound of a whisper came from directly behind them. Too late. The roof gave in. Caleb fired again and again, but every bullet vanished into the dark blur that fell through the ceiling. Sheriff Briggs was thrown against the wall. Her flashlight skittered across the floor, beam landing on something moving impossibly fast. Dr. Holt crawled toward the door, clutching the hard drive. A hand, human, but not, grabbed her ankle. Caleb turned, screaming her name. Then the camera toppled, capturing only their shadows twisting on the walls. The camera survived. Its red light blinked in the snow, facing the outpost. Through the shattered doorway, the creature emerged, taller than the frame could contain, skin glistening wet under the storm light. It moved toward the camera, slow, deliberate, breathing fog into the lens. In that moment, its face shifted, not monstrous, but eerily human. Caleb's face, mouth forming silent words. Then, static. The screen went black. Weeks later, hikers found the wreckage. No bodies, just the shattered outpost, scattered rifles, and a single trail camera half frozen in ice. When officials recovered it, they sealed it in a black evidence case. The footage leaked online 3 days later. It ends with that same shot, the pale figure staring directly into the lens, whispering something that almost sounds like breathing. Wildlife authorities issued a statement. Hoax, they called it. But locals in Bitterroot say some nights, when the wind cuts through the trees just right, you can still hear it whispering a name. Caleb.